Our friend Cocaine Mitch has finally decided to step down as Senate Majority Leader here. He's not actually going anywhere. He's still going to be this ghoul over in D.C., but he's no longer going to be in this leadership role. Dexter, I think we have a lot we can say about this topic.
I think there's a lot to say. As long as the career is the conversation we could have about it.
Exactly. All right, let me pull up and what the Babylon Bee, man. I mean, they had this just sitting in queue, ready to pull out the first second he announced he was stepping down. From BabylonBee.com, McConnell returns to the sea. After years of faithfully serving as the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell has returned to the sea to live out the rest of his life as a turtle. His work on dry land now complete. And where's the end here? Witnesses say that if you sprinkle a tiny bit of cocaine in the water off the coast of Virginia, he will appear. Farewell, Cocaine Mitch.
Oh, I hadn't read this.
It's beautiful. I will put it in the description for anyone that wants to check it out. It's just peak.
And it's the jokes write themselves for you when you're dealing with Mitch McConnell, because not only does he physically resemble a turtle in every way, but he is also immortal like one. So he fits the caricature very easily.
Yeah, I mean, all these, as I said, these ghouls that have been in D.C. forever that refuse to step down, whether it's, we'll talk about Biden in a little bit, whether it's Pelosi, who finally stepped down as Speaker, but is still once again there. You know she's pulling levers of power every 2 seconds. So New Hampshire Bulletin had a decent write-up on him stepping down, that smug face. U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell of Kentucky will step down as the Senate Republican leader in November. He said on the Senate floor Wednesday, announcing his end his run as party leader that broke records for its length and shaped American politics for nearly 2 decades. And the quote of quotes, quote, "One of life's most underappreciated talents is to know when it's time to move on to life's next chapter," unquote. He didn't know when to step down. We are here because he refused to step down decades ago, and over the last decade especially, just devolve into this mass that can barely communicate and is just holding on to power. It has to be corruption. I mean, that's what it comes down to for me. It has to be corruption, either directly, or they know about too many skeletons, or too many people around them know about the skeletons they have, so if they step down, they're going to get blackmailed because they want to have that leverage on him. I can't trust anyone over 80 years old that is floating around in D.C. Anyone's over 70 in D.C.
Well, and he does though come from that Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, Queen Elizabeth school of politics, which is you hold on basically until you die or until you're rendered completely incompetent. But in my view, never has a man held on to power for so long and used it so ineffectually as Mitch McConnell has. And that's the real bone I have to pick with him, not his age.
Yeah, I'm conflicted when it comes to. I think he's a neocon. I think he doesn't match any side of the aisle directly. He played the game. He played the game to stay in power and get done what he wanted to get done. Him and his buddies on the Democrat side know they can go to him. I mean, in theory, it's good to have that sort of collaboration. But I don't see any evidence of it being productive collaboration. He's been kind of one of the issues that has led us into this terrible state we're in right now, where it's just these people that only care about their pet projects and don't really care about anything else. They don't care about ineffectual international policy. They don't honestly do anything about it. They don't honestly try and find the middle of the road to get productive legislation through. They just fight and say, well, I'm going to wait for such and such to finally cave and give me what I'm asking for. Whatever that thing is, we'll never know. But so we just continue with this rat race of nothingness.
Well, it's not just his Democrat collaborators. It's the other establishment GOP leaders in the Senate. Thune, Barrasso, Cornyn, who are all being considered presently as his likely replacements, which would be disastrous. They're just as bad as him in every appreciable way. As I say, not only because they well, at least in his case and some of the others have held on to power so long, but they refuse to use it. They refuse to use the procedural tools of the Senate to check the left. But their priorities are, of course, also just entirely, as you say, out of alignment with the majority wing of the GOP. They seem, these people, completely divorced from the ideals of the people who are electing them. For example, these four men, McConnell, Thune, Barrasso, and Cornyn in the Senate, they're all hunk when it comes to committing our lives and our treasure to these foreign adventures. But when it comes time to face off against the Democrats, they're pure compromise, pure cowardice. At worst, I'd say, even from a legislative perspective, is the fact that the way in which people like McConnell and his acolytes there in the Senate conduct negotiations, it actively sabotages the younger, more responsive Republican House majority on all the key issues of border security, of funding the government, et cetera. So not only is it the senior House, as it was intended to be, but it's the senior House of these sort of unremovable immortals. And they're completely divorced from what the people want. They're divorced from what the party wants, even. So there are layers of difficulty with having this entrenched, aged minority, in this case, in the Senate.
Yeah, I brought this up in our previous segment talking about beer labeling, but it's the refusing to actually get anything done is entirely on themselves. They are in power. Like, even if you're in the minority, you are in a position of power and responsibility to get something done. Like, it's the most basic example, but I want to keep harping on it with the immigration situation down at the Mexican border. Biden has the authority to get things done. Trump did, George W. did, Obama did, like all the previous presidents were able to say, okay, we're going to do this and this and this. We've got an ungodly amount of money that magically they say they don't have every 2 seconds to get things done. And they refuse to lock down the border or take security measures to make sure Americans are safe and nothing is going to happen. We're just now we're recording this on February 29th. I think I was hearing rumblings today that finally Biden is going to stop having Democrats push the sanctuary city model quite so hard as they were previously. I mean, just to see what actually happens with that. I hope he honestly, I hate executive orders, but I really hope for an executive order when it comes to sanctuary cities because it's a real problem and it's harboring.
And on the border, it works, executive order. That's within his purview to act executively. Yeah.
But we have this catastrophic healthcare crisis. We have opioid addictions through the roof with the fentanyl crisis that we've got going on. We've got foreign conflicts that we're just throwing money away to with Ukraine and Israel that are hugely unpopular when it comes to just what exactly are we doing with the money. It's Americans want to feel safe and secure here in this country. They want to make sure we have a presence, I think, generally speaking, overseas to show stability. We don't want to be the peacekeepers of the George W. Bush days anymore. Those days are long done. Most people are not happy that we're throwing all this money at Israel. We're really conflicted when it comes to Ukraine, and we have so many issues right now here at the southern border that's just getting ignored. And they're not doing anything. They're just fighting over, once again, the stupid shutdowns and everything. Like, I understand from a politics perspective, hey, it's great that they're not able to do certain things because of it, but generally speaking, it just makes them look terrible to a majority of the population, ineffectual, that they're not honestly thinking about anything except for themselves. And it has to be the case, especially these people that have been there for decades. And a good thing you actually just brought up too is the age and the not enabling younger generations of lawmakers to start stepping up. I brought this up on election day when it came to Trump and Biden. It's the same thing. All the McConnell, Pelosi, they're just holding on to power instead of grooming the next generation of leaders that can step up and start making these changes that the population wants. It's these boomers and silent generation individuals that are just refusing to let people begin to make the next steps in their life, in their careers, and be able to. So we only get stuck with like Nikki Haley, who I called neocon girl boss, who is just.
I call her bird brain.
Yeah, she's a ghoul of the military industrial system here in the country. Like she's loaded.
Should be an excellent candidate in 2004.
Yeah, exactly. I said that too. She's George Bush V2, and we're not seeing the next leaders really have that chance. Like there's some people out there that I think are doing things that are good. Like I think Rand Paul, from a policy perspective in the Senate, I love what he does. He aligns closer with me. There's a couple other guys like that, especially from the South, that I think are doing a good job.
Tommy Tuberville. Tommy Tuberville was willing to use the procedural powers of the Senate to hold up nominations to support what I think was a very good cause, a just cause, for an extended period of time. Those are the powers that members of the minority in the Senate have when they're willing to use them. McConnell was never willing to use the powers, procedural powers that he had in the Senate.
Yeah. I know you want to talk about shutdown, but I want to talk about shutdown yet.
I want it.
All right.
Let it happen.
I have video clips. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
I think it is super important that people see what has become of these ancient individuals that are leading us. Let's not forget, Mitch McConnell froze twice. As far as we were aware of, it had to have been happening outside of this, when he was giving public speeches, press conferences. And let's just play. This is a PBS NewsHour.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're on a path to finishing the NDAA. This week has been good bipartisan cooperation and a string of
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've lost interest. He doesn't talk for about 30 seconds, if I remember right.
It's alarming.
It's that face. It's that face we see with Biden, and we'll talk about Biden in a second, where they're not home anymore. It's like they have such degradation. I remember there was reporting a few years back, and then he just leaves. There's reporting a few years back, especially when Feinstein was still floating around, where there's a lot of anti-dementia or dementia-fighting drugs that are prescribed hugely around this part of DC. I want to say The Intercept did the reporting on it. This is an across-the-board issue. We have these individuals that are decaying in front of our eyes. This is right here. This was 9 years ago. McConnell and his relationship with Obama. I'm going to skip to when you start talking. Like, look at...
negotiated, but some would argue the only bipartisan agreements that we've had with this administration have all been done by the vice president and myself. And of course, the vice president was not a free agent. He was allowed to do so by the president. The 2-year extension.
When was the last time you saw Mitch McConnell just speak that way? You're muted.
Hear me?
Yep, there we go. Yeah.
It's a different man.
Just the eyes. You just look at their eyes. I don't know what they're giving these guys, but there has to be something that's causing facial inflammation, and their eyes just gloss over. It's apparent in some instances where they're giving Biden something to make him do these speeches.
Well, there's been reports on that, I think, as well, suggesting that performers in entertainment are known to use things like this at times. And it's been suggested that Biden also has some sort of pharmaceutical support when he goes on to make speeches. And I know Trump, up to and including just the other night, frequently makes fun of the fact that Biden can't maintain any energy in a speech for more than a few minutes because the octane runs out.
Yeah.
Implying that
5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. He does run out quick of if they're giving him something, whatever it seems to be that they give him, that he can't maintain a lengthy, even, I don't want to say dialogue because it's not a dialogue. He doesn't do that. Even a lengthy discourse, a speech, he can't maintain for more than a few minutes. And you do see that with these elder statesmen who are not well. And again, performers have been doing this for years. It doesn't shock me at all. DC is essentially performance art for ugly people, so it's not surprising to me at all that they are embracing the same techniques as a singer would.
Yeah, and there's Biden. So this is after he already kind of waddled around, shaking everyone's hands around this U-shaped table. It was, let's just get right to him talking.
The sacrifice of that of your families, not just you, your families as well. And thanks to the law enforcement and community leaders here today who have helped bring down violent crime rates in their cities to historic lows. That's right, we're about to talk about what's going to happen now. You know, you just heard from the chief, and they salute these cities are making historic progress here.
He lost his place. There's no way he didn't lose his place right there.
Yeah, something happened. Yeah.
Saul, they gave him enough of something to at least allow him to figure out he had to turn the page. But
he's scanning up and down to find the
lowest rates of all violent crimes in more than 50 years. Murder rate,
look, he's using his hand
rape, aggravated assault, robbery, all dropped sharply, along with burglary, property.
Just the slurring of the words. And the BS when it is not a stutter. He is slurring his words. He jumbles over his words. Run Don't Walk is a fantastic YouTuber, conservative guy. Check out his videos. He goes ad nauseum at this sort of stuff, which I think is good for the dialogue. He's obviously very much a conservative, hardliner, Trumpy guy, but he's great reporting on and tracking these speeches and showing all the issues with it, because it's terrifying to think that this is going back to 2008 when he was going to be the vice president of Iowa PBS. I just want to play this clip so you can once again legislate. Mitch, what was he like?
Look, it's not the plan, it's the man or the woman pushing the plan. If you look at all of our plans, there's not a whole lot of difference between them. We all talk about taking care of children, and some of us talk about catastrophic. We talk about being able to buy into the plan that all federal employees are able to buy into. But the fact is that it really is going to take someone who's going to be able to take on the insurance industry. They spend
night and day again.
There he seems like a healthy older gentleman.
Yeah.
Now he seems like a geriatric patient.
Yeah, it's sad and pathetic. Like, I was originally, in fact, I got it right here. I think I was going to do a whole thing on the Department of Justice, where they decided not to do anything.
Yeah.
But it got kind of, everyone hit everything I was going to talk on it. But he's just a mumbling old guy that is, people would just feel bad for if they decided to bring any charges, because they'd have to reveal all his failings of his health and being able to function and remember anything. You saw those two things. Like, he had to word for word look at that script. He gave a bunch of nonsense fillers when he was looking up and then go back down again, and nonsense fillers. As opposed to him there, he was a very skilled politician. Mitch McConnell and him were very skilled politicians. They knew how to play that game. I know a guy, a friend of mine, who worked in politics down in Kentucky, and knew Mitch back in the day when Ron Paul was floating around and such. And he was a beast that you did not want to deal with. You wanted to avoid getting anywhere near his bad side.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was the kingmaker in a lot of ways for a while. Even when Sununu here in New Hampshire was considering running, I remember one of the times that I thought quite certainly that Sununu might be running was because he had taken a trip down to Kentucky and he had gone to see Mitch McConnell. Well, there it is then. No more. I mean, we see he was recently attended a few months ago a fair in his home state in Kentucky, and he was relentlessly booed and heckled on the stage. You know, he demanded to resign by all of his constituents there. I mean, this is a man whose declining age has clearly presented itself to everyone who's looking at him, and that kingmaker status is no more.
Yeah, definitely not. We need new blood in all of these. I'm not saying we need some damn 18-year-old like we keep hearing from the progressive left, but like just someone safely in their 40s?
No.
Can we have someone a little older than me? Can we have like
Rand Paul
it's
would be a
like-
great, it will never happen, but Rand Paul would be great. Tommy
Yeah.
Tuberville would be great. He's older, but but no, it is going to be a choice between Thune, Barrasso, and Cornyn, McConnell's horrid rhino acolytes. And I'm very much unhappy with the fact that that's what we're going to be left. I think it speaks very much to our need for hardening up our primary election processes and making it as difficult as possible for Democrats to vote in Republican primaries. Because if the base had their say, surely all 4 of those men would be out. Mm-hmm. They are not supported by the Republican base.
Yeah. Yeah, all the nonsense with the state-to-state primaries. I like how it's the feds don't have a say when it comes to it, but it's obvious that these caucus systems, all these disparate ways that every state does it. I think the New Hampshire primary for the president, I think is the greatest primary, the way it's set up, generally speaking, but it fails the second you don't have both major candidates on the ticket, which is what happened this cycle.
Well, and when we're talking about Senate candidates, too, there are other considerations. They sit for 6-year terms. We've got to think about the fact, something that I'm always very concerned about, and probably is not worth getting into in too much detail here, but the 17th Amendment was passed in 1913, about 110 years ago, and that fundamentally changed the structure of the federal government when we took the election of senators away from the state legislatures, as the framers of the Constitution intended it, practiced it for hundreds of years, and turned it into a popular contest. That was not the original intention of the structure of the bicameral legislature in the United States. So the primary system, I think, shoring it up, keeping more Democrats out of the primaries for senators may help. But ultimately, this wasn't the way we were meant to be picking people who sit in the senior house for 6-year terms with different roles and responsibilities. And I think we've seen what happens when we popularly elect and essentially anoint these people to sit in these immortal terms.
Yeah, it's a big thing that's always brought up, and people are probably shouting in the background, is term limits and such. I see no problem with 4-term limit for a senator. If you can't accomplish what you want to accomplish in 18 years, I think you're a failure as a politician.
Our framers considered term limits, and they decided that the people could decide whether or not they wanted to institute a term limit by not reelecting someone. I'm much more concerned with, if it were possible, repealing the 17th Amendment, which, in my view, fundamentally changed the structure of the federal government. Certainly, if the president of the Kentucky Senate could get on the phone and call Mitch McConnell and say, listen, Mitch, our boys aren't going to be going to Ukraine, and if you want to keep pushing this, we'll have you out. It would do a lot better than having to primary him and try to throw out this old, well-moneyed individual every 6 years. I think we ought to look at a mistake we made.
These corrupt state parties that only think about their own best interests as opposed to what's in the best interest of the country or the state being representative. So people forget, fundamentally, the Senate is made to represent the states that we send people to. It is not supposed to be what the president has become, where it kind of goes back and forth every 4 to 8 years, which fine. I'm okay with a little bit of that craziness. I think some things can happen that's useful, but
that's part of the intention too. Is not a popular passion can't take over in one night,
Right. But the Senate is made to represent the states. The progressive left and the populist right have both ignored the role of the states and our little ecosystems that we have across this country, where we can play with things, and people that feel a certain way can do that and not necessarily impact people that are in another state. And you go to a different state. If you disagree with them that much, maybe consider getting a job in another state. But our economics in our country are so screwed up right now with the availability of jobs and housing, corrupt political parties, and just disastrous political parties, so you can't get proper reforms in place. You get these little groups, like we see all this craziness with the Free Staters here in New Hampshire trying to take over the Republican Party, and there's this just, we're gonna beat the crap out of each other instead of figuring it out. And the Democrats, you got the crazy progressives that want abortion to be legal up until a kid is 6 years old, and versus the traditional Democrats, they're like, I just want to have a job and get paid and make sure that there's some unemployment insurance. Can I have that, please? It's like somewhere in the middle, please, guys.
Yeah, that's, and certainly on both sides, the people who we have in the Senate are not representing what's happening on the ground. Again, nor should they perfectly represent it. They were intended to represent the states, and the House should be the more popular legislative body. But they certainly should not be living in their own ivory towers the way they are now.
All right. NewEnglandTake.com, Dexter Tarbox, contributor. Thanks for joining me this week.
Thanks, AJ.
All right, I'm going to be hopefully having our former guest on the show, friend of the show, Chris Mayman, on the show here soon to talk about his PAC that he's putting together, getting some liberty-minded candidates in. I'm excited to see what he's been up to after leaving AFP and then going over to Never Back Down. And now I want to figure out what that crazy guy's up to. He's gotten pretty popular on Twitter, so give him a follow and check out what he's been up to. But
let's do a little dancing on Nikki Haley's grave.
I know, right?
He deserves it.
I told him we could talk about the race if he wants. I got the feeling he's got some words, so that'll be fun. So AFP is not paying us at the moment, so I can say whatever I want. All right, NewEnglandTake.com, like and subscribe. We'll talk to you soon.